is from my father.
Wow.
I mean, he completely structured the Kabbalah Sarada system. All the structuring, the ranking, all that stuff, at least during that time, I think they still use that same structuring. That all comes from there. And so then anything that shoots off of that is influenced by that. So where you might call, or everyone calls Manong Angel the father of Eskrima in the Filipino martial arts in the United States, not because he was necessarily the first person teaching publicly, because he wasn't, right? But because he was probably the most well known for that. And not necessarily just because of him, right? Which is, I can go into that, but then you'd have to say that at least in some way my father was the architect of that, because my father created that, helped create that organization of, these many angles, this many counters, this is the structure, here's the basic diploma, here's the advanced diploma, here's the master's diploma, created that, did all the graphic art to that, all of that stuff, because I still have the original artwork.
You have the templates.
Yeah, I have all that stuff, right?
Wow. That'd be cool to see.
He influenced that, and he influenced the West Coast Eskrima Society, and then he went off and started, working with, the law enforcement. He's one of the people that was involved, even though he's not the most outspoken person or the most well-sung. My Uncle Danny is, for developing the toilet rule, which is that 20-foot or 21-foot rule and all stuff like that, right? They were all part of that whole thing, and then he wasn't the first person to bring Filipino martial arts to Europe, but he helped do that. That's Rene Latosa, Grandmaster Rene Latosa. Yes. Everybody should laud him for that. He wasn't the American that won the championships in the Philippines as master finder, right? But he did go to Australia. He did go to all these other places and develop that. And so he did so much for the Filipino martial arts, because that was what actually Max Sarmiento wanted him to do. He says preserve and propagate.
So let me ask you this, because of what you're saying, I'm just like, wow. A lot of the stuff that you're saying, I've never heard of.
No,
because
people don't talk about it.
Was that,
or don't know?
Was he just wanted to be low key like that, or was it?
My dad was shy.
Was
really?
Yeah, he was shy. He was an introvert.
So he didn't.
I remember going to bookstores with him, and he's the one that got me into reading. Right? My first book that he got me to read was, we went to go teach in New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. So he took me and he handed me Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
And I'm 14, and I read that entire book in that trip. Right, and and we would go to bookstores, and he'd be quiet and stuff. And I remember someone bumped into him or something like that, and he goes, and he started like kind of mean mugging my dad and yelling. I'm watching this. I'm not gonna jump in. I know my dad's gonna get me. And my dad was self-effacing. Like, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I don't know. I wasn't talking to you. He goes, did you say this? And he said, no, sir. I was just in book. And I just he was quiet and shy person. Right, and he wasn't there for him. He wanted to be respected, I think, and I think he wanted to be well thought of and liked. Just everybody wants that, right? Yeah. But it was never. I mean, like the rule that we have here, like my title is Suro, right? That's the title that he designated for the system, for the head of the system, right? Some people call me Grandmaster, some people call me Professor. And when I introduced myself as Jason, because my example was my dad. Right. My name's Mike.
That was it.
Hi, Mike.
That was it.
Yeah.
Right? And so and it's hard with people in the West, because they take it as a familiarity thing. They don't realize that you still need to have some kind of respect and understanding. Right? So he was larger than life, at least to his son. Larger than life in a lot of ways, but like he was a very good role model in most senses as a father to a son, in the sense that he never boasted, even though he did a lot.
Wow.
Right? He never tried to pick fights, although I'm sure he did when he was in his youth. Right? He was mostly interested in contributing to the culture and the art, and he had this uncanny ability to almost like download information in you, that he was such a good instructor, and at the same time make you feel important. As he talked to you, even doesn't matter whether you were a student with him for 2 years or a student for 5 years, and he went out of his way to, and that's a more proprio kind of concept in the Filipino martial arts or Filipino culture. Never tried to make anybody look bad, even though they may have deserved it.
And he brought everybody up.
So oddly
rising
enough,
tide lifts all boats.
So oddly enough, that's what I'm sensing from you that's pretty much how you really.
And I would love to see that.
Now,
On
I mean,
camera.
now that I'm hearing all this stuff,
Oh yeah.
like I said, when I first ran into you in Sacramento, I was like, "Oh, that guy's mean." Let me just, I mean, I think
He's gonna cut me.
at the time that I saw you, you were yelling at some people to try to get set going. I think you were trying to help with the event by getting people to the right places, and you were like, like, wow, who's this guy?
Yeah. I can yell. But the thing is my partner when I was in law enforcement, he never seen me yell. And the first time he saw me, like I remember it was this guy was high on heroin, and I've been looking for him for like 6 months. Like when you're working fugitive retrieval, you get 6 months maximum, and then you have to renew the court documentation to still be under the color of law. And I was getting to the deadline, and I was like, I'm not gonna find this guy. I'm not gonna find this guy. And it was like a $250,000 warrant, right?
Wow.
Catch the guy, and I was so angry because he got his girlfriend hooked on heroin.
Oh.
And I grabbed the guy out of the car and I bodily chuck him out. And I'm yelling at him as he's like high. I'm like, did you just get your girlfriend hooked on heroin, you piece of... And my partner's like, holy crap, dude, you need to calm down. Because I don't normally yell, right? But like if I have a situation where I need to, I can raise my voice, I can command. But I'm not that person. I'm not looking to lead people that way or tell people what to do.
No, but you
think you should be able to.
Class, because
You have to.
Yeah.
Right? Because people need to know that there's someone in charge, especially when sharp, pointy things are involved, that there's someone that's maybe
hey guys,
kind of looking out for everyone else. Right?
That's
So,
funny.
yeah.
Well,
That's
dude, I'm liking the guy that's sitting in front of us.
Yes.
When we first met
Next
you legitimately at Legacy 8, I thought you were an awesome guy. I was like, dude, this guy's cool, even though I didn't know who he was. And he's probably thinking, what a jackass. He says my name, but he doesn't even realize it's me. I'm like, God, I must come across.
No, not actually. I just thought it was funny because, I don't introduce myself by my last name or by my title or because that's the way my dad brought me up.
Yeah, he's
right?
like Jason, and then he asked you what your shirt was about.
I want to know what I was there to find out about other people. Like I was supposed to demonstrate, and I left. Right? I'm like, this is taking too long. I got family stuff. I'm leaving. Right? There's lots of Filipino martial arts. It was during the time when West Coast Eskrima Society was here. Part of the purpose of that was the Filipino martial culture was dying.
I agree. You're right.
Today, it's not dying.
No.
It's alive. It's strong. There are, good and bad and, indifferent, but it's there.
Were you surprised when you watched The Bladed Hand, Sunny Susan and you guys were on there, to hear that a lot of Filipinos in the Philippines didn't know what Filipino martial arts was?
No.
No.
Because I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah.
You could tell that. You could tell it by the immediate adoption of the belt.
Yeah.
Now, it's necessary to have some kind of ranking device because people need to know how they progress, and that's important, right? And there's a lot of other psychological benefits to having uniforms and things like that make it easier for people to learn and progress. Provided that the instructor and the curriculum is designed to truly uplift the student. That's why I like Guru of all instructor titles. Guru is my favorite because Sensei means the one who knows the way. Sifu is stern father. All these different names, right? Tuhan, all this stuff is like leader, chief, whatever, right? They're all great, but Guru means to uplift.
Yeah.
And I love that, right? So they're just trying to uplift the art, trying to uplift people, and that was the ultimate, main thrust, purpose of that time was let's revitalize and give cultural identity to these Filipino Americans who think they have no cultural identity.
Right.
During that time. So when you say, oh, look at these people here and they didn't even know. No, not a surprise, really. Right? The thing is the gun really killed the martial arts in the Philippines.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? What do I need to learn how to use a bala song if I go bang? Or even an Indian Pana for that part.
Right.
Right? Indian Pana, means that I don't have to be as skillful. You need to be skillful with a stick or with a dagger or with a garote, which is a, harder, flatter, meaner stick, right? You need to be skillful. And the Nine Sisters Eskrima emblem, right? It goes a sword, and then behind the sword, if I'm looking from the camera, is a stick, and then underneath is a hand, right? Or over here is a hand, and so my father explains this Like anybody can be lethal with a sword, right? It's harder to be lethal with a stick.
Right.
And still harder to be lethal with a hand.
Mm-hmm.
And the old tradition was, oh yeah, I teach you blade. I kind of like you, so I might teach you the stick. I trust you and value you, so I'll teach you the hand.
Wow.
That was the
That's kinda cool.
old way.
Yeah.
Now today we teach the hand and the knife first. A lot of the times.
A lot of times we don't. We stitchers in the sense that we felt that teaching the stick taught you everything else after it anyways.
True.
And then you really enhance it as you move along
As you understand.
to go to
deeper.
empty hands.
Oh, I agree. Totally.
Yeah.
The traditions are useful in certain sense. I mean, the thing is with the advent of the gun, going back to that statement, right? Some of that hierarchy or that protocol is not necessary anymore.
True.
Right. And from a practical point of view, I need to be, my students need to be able to defend themselves with emptying because they're not carrying a sword.
Ever.
Oh, yeah.
Ever.
Or even a stick.
Or even a stick.
I mean, it depends on people still carry swords in the rest of the world. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
everywhere else, yeah,
Caribbean, it's not common to see someone walking around with a machete. I mean, if you haven't seen Haitian machete fights, then you probably are, searching for something else.
Yeah,
My
I was
hometown
watching one
still
on
carries machetes on the open.
I watched one on YouTube just this morning.
How bored were you?
Well, FMA discussions had.
Oh, okay.
They were talking about this guy had a machete in one hand and something else in the other hand, and he's actually forearm blocking the guy.
Oh, this is the fight in the New York subway. I watched that fight.
Yeah, I was like,
so it was machete versus machete.
Yeah.
Because people go, well, how often do you ever gonna have a certain? I'm thinking, the thing is like that's a very interesting point of view. But maybe if you thought about more than just where you live, then you'd realize that there's some salience to that, right?
Yes.
Africa,
yeah.
right?
Well, look,
It's
in Europe, all they ever use is knives. You hear
they still have
all
gun
the
crime
time.
there, but
yeah, but you hear all the time about the knife guys running around with a machete.
Oh, just recently somebody got threatened with a knife in a restaurant.
Yeah.
They wanted to get him out. Ready to stab somebody. It's like, okay, that's your go-to thing. Why not learn it?
I think you should learn everything.
Yeah.
Right. At least to a degree, you should to be modern. You should understand firearms, and I don't think you should. Whatever your political or emotional feeling is about different kinds of tools, whether it be a gun or a sword or a knife, to be ignorant of it is to be naive.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, definitely.
And the thing is that you can't legislate against chemistry. So an exothermic response is an exothermic response. I can do that with gunpowder, and I can do that with gasoline. I can do that. I mean, it's kind of I don't understand people when they look at some of that stuff. I'm like, you should be aware of the things that are around you. Like how many things are dangerous to you and that can be used against you.
Right.
Right. So.
That and you're absolutely right. Because I remember growing up, I learned a lot of different things because living in the Mission in San Francisco,
Never being home.
everything came out. Everybody had. I mean, it wasn't just fist fights. It was everything. The watching, all the tongs and all those guys who were in that Chinatown area. I mean, I was there. I'm like, this is not cool. I got to learn how to really, you look at all the different things that are coming out at you. How do I defend against that? How do I stop that? How do I stop this? And they're like, my cousins led Belisos over on Army or Cesar Chavez now. But, I had to go over there because one, it was free, but I went to Mission High School, which was like a really, back in the days, it was a real rowdy school. I mean, students would beat up teachers left and right all the time. So I actually had a gun pulled in my, right at my forehead. I'm like, fuck, this is not cool. I need to do, you know what I mean? So you had to, growing up in that area, you had to learn a lot of different things. And I tried to learn as much as I could, but it was hard, Because a lot of times when you went to those schools, they told you, oh, you shouldn't be violent. You shouldn't. Wait, there's a contradiction. I see all this shit and you're telling me.
Don't fight back.
I mean,
Right?
the thing is that we should all get along, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that
That's not reality.
you should endeavor to be amicable, affable, all of those things. But at the same time, you should be ready,
Oh,
or
definitely.
at least understand the possibility thereof, right? I mean, we've moved a long way from the old gentleman's tradition of teaching our sons how to fight with swords so that they could immediately be conscripted into a standing army. That was the whole point of a militia at one point.
Right.
Why we had dueling in America up into the 1930s or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've come a long way away from that to be more civilized, but the world still intends to be what it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Because if the
People
crime
are
rate's as
people.
bad as they've been, I mean, worse ever.
The world isn't any worse than it was then, right?
Right.
I mean, look, Filipinos used to eat each other 700 years ago. I mean, let's just be real. Like less than 100 years ago would not be uncommon for someone like you to be married, to be purchasing your bride from another homesteader who's 14 years old. Now, I'm
Right.
not saying that that's right. I'm just saying, like,
That
give
was
yourself
the
some,
reality back
give
then.
yourself some scope in history to understand what yours. And the reality is, while you think that things are not going to be dangerous here, we're just the United States,
Yeah.
right? There are, south of the border, it's more dangerous. If you want to go and hang out in Juarez, it's going to be a completely different experience,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? You go into certain areas of the, like I spent a lot of time in law enforcement in, Potrero Hill, on International Boulevard between 82nd and 95, right?
Wow.
And
Yeah,
going into these places where people are like, you go there. I'm like, yeah, I go there because that's where I have to work.
That's
You go
my
east-
job.
That's and
You're in Ventura Hill?
I've been to Potrero Hill a couple times. Yeah, I had the
You
housing
know Mike
officers.
Pilata?
No, I don't know the people.
Oh,
I had to
he's,
do-
he's an officer over there.
I don't know. I know
Yeah.
my plot. I remember like I had a case there, and all of a sudden, car, like a black and white comes up. So I says, "What are you guys doing here?" And it's like, "Oh, we're looking for this." You show them, and look, we called in. She says, "Yeah, I know. I heard you call, but what do you guys? You guys need to call housing authority before you come in, because we'll assign you a housing officer to come and walk with you because we know the crowd." He says, "You realize that, nobody." Doesn't matter the color of skin. If they don't belong in this neighborhood, they don't come here.
Yeah.
And I went, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like I figured badged,
We didn't get that.
vested,
We didn't get that memo.
didn't get that
strap I'd have been
briefing.
fine. But like, oh, I didn't know. Like,
Nobody brought that up in
he goes,
briefing.
oh, I know who you're looking for. Let's go to this house, and we eventually
Damn.
follow through with our investigation. So, but like,
That's funny.
the world is not as safe as people think. I remember.
I love that he said that. He finally somebody said it out loud.
It's not as safe as you. Like, so we're in Los Gatos. This is an completely not whitewashed, but it's very affluent.
Yeah, we were talking about that while we were driving by. We're
Some
like,
very nice houses.
I've arrested people here for sex offense and drugs and other stuff. I did, and then not 4 miles away from here, there were 2 cartel hitmen living in an apartment. Not 4 miles from here, right? Like people think it's safe. I'm like, it's safe because you don't end up crossing paths with these people because
Right.
of where you go and where you do. That doesn't mean that they're not amongst
They
you.
are.
oh, yeah.
Right? And I've been in cartel houses and done that stuff. And I'm just, you look at that and go, you probably should learn how to use a gun.
Right.
Defend against a knife. I mean, like,
What
I mean-
police department are you from?
I didn't work in a police department.
Oh,
I
you're
was,
in law enforcement then.
fugitive retrieval you work for private companies, bail bond companies, right? You get contracts with
bounty
them and stuff
hunter.
like that, right? And
Fugitive
you're badged.
retrieval.
You're badged. You work with them. Like I worked with sheriffs in, in different investigations. You
Right.
call in, you work with them, you ask them questions. Sometimes, see, the thing is that some of them are smart. They know that if you have a case with the person that they're looking for, we don't need warrants.
Oh, nice.
We need no warrant. It doesn't matter where they are.
You can just go in.
Technically speaking, they need to be in a home that's theirs, registered as their home. But we don't actually need warrants. And the reason why is because when they go through that whole process and they exercise their 8th Amendment right, they also sign away all of their rights to privacy. Right?
Oh, okay.
So they would use us to open doors sometimes
Oh, okay.
That's
because
like
we had the right to go
private company, yeah.
anytime that we want. But at the same time, we still had to obey all the laws and do all the
Right,
things and
right.
be trained
Of
and do
course.
that. And, I remember my boss, when he first hired me, he's like, asking me questions. I said, look, I'm not risk prone. I wasn't at that time, right?
Yeah, because like, man.
I wasn't the type to take a lot of risk, but the job kind of is risky, right?
Right.
And then I'm like, but I'm not risk averse either. I told him, I'm like, I don't have a problem. And so the first time he takes me on investigation, he goes, okay, we're looking for this guy. He gives me the case number and picture and stuff, the guy's name. I don't even remember. It's so long ago now, right? It's 2015, right?
Wow.
And he goes, okay, so we go to this halfway house in downtown San Jose, and he gets stopped by the food service guy. He's asking questions, and I just walk in. It's his first day out in the field. And I'm like walking through this halfway house, which is not exactly safe, not entirely dangerous, but
Right.
it's not like you want to take your 5-year-old through a walk through a halfway house. It's a different place, different kind of place, right?
Right.
I'm walking through the house, and I'm like, You seen Mike? I don't know if the guy's name was Mike. It could have been Miguel. It could have been Maestro. I don't know what his name was. Right?
Mike
Right?
was.
I'm like, is he Mike? And then he kind of said to me, his name was Juan. He goes like, man, what are you doing? I said, you told me to look for this guy. I'm looking for the guy. He goes, you can't go in by yourself. I'm like, well, why not? That's what I'm paid to do, is to find the guy. And if I got the guy, I catch
get
him.
paid.
I get handcuffs, and like we arrest him. Right? So I mean, like, that's kind of like the experience. So you work with police and you work with them and you do that, but at the same time, I remember I had a conversation with a deputy. He's like, "Oh, you guys, you think you're cowboys?" I'm like, the only reason why we have a job is because you guys don't actually serve your warrants. Right? That's the only reason why. The bench warrant comes out, and it's not because they don't want to.
They don't have enough.
There's not enough of them to find all of the registered sex offenders that are not reporting in and doing their court. There's not enough to find all the drug dealers. Not enough to find all the the violent offenders and all that stuff. There's just not enough. The police hope that you get caught in a traffic stop or get caught in some other altercation, and then they sit you down and they run your information. They find out you have a warrant and they pull you in that way. That's what that's their police approach. So these people who have active warrants are out in public doing their things. Most of the time, they're just ordinary people that made bad choices. Right.
Didn't show up.
But at the same time, you still wouldn't want them to babysit your child. Right. I mean, so you have to balance that kind of stuff. So that's what I did. Right?
That's cool.
It was a good job for a while. It was a good experience, and I got to serve the public, which was what I wanted to do, while still being able to teach classes.
Let me ask you this, because I know we're running. Are we already beyond our?
Oh, we're about an hour 20 at this point.
An hour 20.
I kind of stopped keeping time after like 45 minutes.
Can we get you to do some demonstrations?
I hope so.
You get to.
I'm a little stiff-legged from the run, but
It's
I
okay.
should
You don't have to
be
do
able to do a
anything.
thing,
You don't have to do anything.
We'll do disarms.
Disarms. Disarm or disarm? Or that arm?
That arm.
It'd have to be mine.
Are you fluent in Tagalog?
No.
Yeah, I don't hear the accent.
No. So, that was part of the thing. So, like, during the part of the problem with the cultural identity erosion that happened in the Central Valley for Philams that were growing up there, right? My mother's generation, the families were being told by the educational board not to teach the children how to speak the language,
right?
Because it would make it harder for them to, fit in with the rest of the public. And this is still, I think, there was still like whites and Filipino water fountains and bathrooms. It might have been just after that, but that's still in that timeline, right?
Very fresh.
Very, so segregation, like, that we talk about mostly from the story of the African American public, which is, we're starting on another African American public history or history month next in 2 days, right? Don't realize that there was segregation, for Filipinos as well, just as there was slavery for the Chinese during the West. There was a lot of that going around. But so there's like you'll fit in better. You'll be able to adjust to the culture if you don't speak. If they don't learn how to speak the language.
Right.
Right. That's my mother's generation.
Or
my
get the
father's
attitude.
So then, the attitude you can.
That's always going to be there.
Yeah, it's
if
always
they're getting
gonna
it
be
at the house, they're going to dish it out to everybody.
Yeah, when your grandfather's looking at you, sucking on his teeth.
Yeah.
Allah, and walks away. Bulak bull, all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm a product of that, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
and I've even gotten, which is really like I find awful about and very small-minded about people. They'll say stuff like, "Oh, you're a rough Pinoy." I'm like, what the hell is a rough Pinoy?
Yeah.
He goes, "Well, you weren't born in the Philippines, so you're not really Filipino." What? Like, I don't remember signing up for either or.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, it could be argued that I'm quite lucky that I wasn't born in the Philippines.
Right.
I don't know, like, I guess sometimes, but it's just a very small-minded thing, like, you're not truly Filipino unless you can speak the language.
Dude, I used to get that all the time, because you can hear my accent, I don't have it, right? I had one of my coworkers come up to me and goes, "Hey, the other Filipinos don't like it." I go, "Why not?" He goes, "You're not Filipino enough." I'm like, okay, cool.
What was that guy that you talked on the phone and then you met him in person? Like, "Oh, you're Filipino?"
Yeah.
They thought you were white.
You get that all the time.
Yeah.
It's sad and it's stupid, but other Filipinos not liking you because you're not Filipino.
It's not stupid, it's ignorant.
Yeah.
And it's just prejudice against your own kind.
Yeah.
It's like you hear African Americans saying someone else is not black enough.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing. I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous sentiment. Sorry if that offends anybody that's going to view this.
No, I
That,
agree.
that sentiment is just dumb.
It
No,
blew
like
me away when he approached me and told me that the other Filipinos don't like because I'm not Filipino enough.
Right?
I was like, well, you know, I didn't grow up in the Philippines. I grew up here in the States, so there should be some truth to that. But
And that generation was struggling to immigrate to the
To
United
get here.
States. Meanwhile, they struggled to get here to insult us about not being Filipino. Okay, that makes no sense, right?
I gotta go to America.
You're
talk
gonna
shit
live
to
the rest of your
Filipinos.
life and only eat with a spoon. That's fine. I'm
Yeah.
gonna use the fork, the knife, and the spoon because I was born here.
Right.
You know, like okay, that's fine, right?
That's-
You know what I'm talking
No,
about? Right? Like
big time.
they only use the spoon most
dude,
of
when
the
I
time.
went to visit the Philippines the first time, and I only used the fork, all the kids were making because, Mama, well, how come you only use the fork and not the spoon? And you know how you do the whole thing. I think because this is it's easier for me. God damn it.
This is what I know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's ignorance is on both sides and stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make
Yeah.
people bad people.
No,
or
not
that.
at
It's just,
all. They loved me over there, but they just thought it was weird that I only had
it's just
fork.
culture.
Yeah. It's like,
Cultural differences. Yeah, I get it. So let's show some of it on the mat.
Let's
show-
do it.
show
I actually
the
can only
United
talk.
cultural difference.
I'm all talk.
folks, we'll be right back. We're
What
going to
can
set
we
up the
say?
room and we'll see you in a All right, folks, we're back. Now we're going to, before we go anywhere, right?
Where we
You
go?
have anything from your school, your...
I teach in
Your
Los
good
Gatos. I teach in Los Gatos, and I have a member site. It's on Patreon. The URL that you can use is suroinay, suroinay.com/PTRN. Right? And that's my Patreon
All right.
site, my member pay site, essentially.
any on Facebook or anything like that? Instagram?
All you have to do is search my name and you'll find my
Yeah, that is how
my
we
accounts.
found you.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Jason and I.
Jason INAY.
Right.
And I have Nine Base, at a Nine Base is my martial arts account on Instagram, and then I'm Jason Inai, just Jason
Cool,
Inai on Facebook.
So, folks, if you want to learn anything from this young man, wait,
This is what extreme.
48,
48?
48,
Oh,
yeah.
you are young.
Yeah, we did the math.
youngish.
Youngish, yeah. Yeah. He has a good looks for you.
He's got 12 years on
Yeah.
him. I hope
So
I
how
like
come
that.
you're not in the
12
Philippines
years.
doing movies?
Why am I not?
I mean, because you have the look that they're always
You have the build, yeah.
I don't have an agent. Do you have an agent for me?
I might
We
know some
know a
people.
few.
we
Could
might,
be fun.
We might set you
Could
up.
be fun.
That's bad. You said it. He's gonna contact somebody.
All right, folks, I'm going to get out of the way.
Yes.
This is going to show his stuff, and as always, if he makes Naeem squeal, it's $25. So have fun.
He has
Enjoy
yet to
yourselves.
pay anyone. I'm just telling you right now, he hasn't paid a soul. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, if I crush your trachea, you don't have to squill, and then they won't have to pay you.
That's not good.
I'm just saying.
Damn you,
Right?
Rick. Of all people you're gonna say that to, you asshole.
Just an oil check, and you'll squill. What would we like to just demonstrate here?
Sorry, I'm still trying to recover from the trauma of that image. I would really love to see how you carry on teaching the things that you got from your father.
Okay.
Like, how do you still keep that in? Because you incorporate a lot of other things along with it. You're talking about the reality-based training, right?
I mean, the thing is that the training should be. You know, my father used to say that the week will be removed from the class because the training should be hard enough to do that. That was his mentality, right?
Wow.
So I don't need to kick someone out. They'll just quit because they don't want to go through the next thing, whatever it is. And that's always been true, right? So there's an element of danger as you get better, right? And I tell students, if you want to get better, you need to assume more risk. I don't think that you should assume that risk. And they go, what do you mean? I says, I'm not encouraging you to risk getting hurt,
Right.
right? But if you want to be better, it will be at the cost of that risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you start off trading light, but eventually I hit you hard or fast or make the attacks more complex. And I try to attack you ways that I wouldn't attack, right? Like I use a lot of spinning attacks now, right?
Really?
But I would never turn my back on my opponent if I didn't have
Yeah.
to. But the thing is, other systems use spinning attacks. My job is not to simulate the way that I attack. You need to learn how to defend against other people, right? So then we need to look at other styles and at least simulate some of the signaling so that way you can recognize. That's part of the whole OODA loop idea.
Oh, that's
How can I
beautiful.
observe and orient something that I don't have any kind of record of?
Well, let's play off that because you know.
So let's do some serrata since that's like the basis of the system.
Okay.
How do you use that?
Okay.
Right. So the serrata is, the 9 is representative of the 1960s to maybe mid 1970s serrata, which is different than say serrata from the 80s or the 90s. I mean, a lot of the newer school guys that got masters from Monong Angel, they're using an 18-inch tube.
Okay.
Right. When Monong Angel was my dad's teacher, they were using 24, 30-inch sticks. So it's a little different in length, and it could be argued that one is better than the other.
Yeah, because this is what, about 30?
This is a 28. This is about 26 inches.
Okay.
My personal fighting stick length is 33. I like 33 inches.
Okay.
Right, but certain styles lend themselves to different kinds of articulation. Right.
And then right at the end.
Traditional is to not have any puño.
Okay.
Right, and then my dad said that it's okay to have 3 fingers.
Oh, just like us.
Right. And you'll see some people that'll have a full hand.
Yeah, and that feels awkward to me.
So I like the 3 fingers because I can strike with that. I can manipulate